Welcome to the third session in our series on cell evangelization, focusing on the Third Commandment here at Transfiguration. It's a privilege and joy to be with all of you again as we continue to look into this important way of observing the Lord's commands. In our first sessions, we looked at how it is that the Lord, through the Scriptures, gave us an understanding of what it means to have a day of rest. And then, in our second session, we looked at how this commandment was observed throughout the centuries. For today, we're going to be looking at what is happening with the Third Commandment at the start of the 21st century. But before we can look at and understand the current climate, we need to take just a quick little history lesson and go back to the French Revolution. Right at the time that our own country was being founded, across the ocean in France, a far more significant and rupturous event was occurring with the French revolutionaries. The revolutionaries there didn't see themselves simply about casting off a particular form of government, but rather an entire worldview, with a great focus on wanting to undo the influence of Christianity. They achieved many different sweeping societal reforms as a part of this effort. Chief among them was completely redoing the calendar. Each month was given a new name as an idea of saying, the world has begun again. We've entered a new era in our humanity. Among the different revolutionaries was the figure of Voltaire. Voltaire was chiefly kind of a scribe, and he would focus a lot of his acerbic wit against his opponents. But he said something in the midst of the revolution that is quite chilling. He said, if you wish to destroy Christianity, all you have to do is destroy Sunday. Think about that. What does it mean to have Christianity if we can't have Sunday? Now, of course, the French Revolution did not succeed in this effort, and eventually the reforms that it put in place were gradually walked back, not entirely, but certainly in the most extreme measures. And France continued to have a predominantly Catholic population for quite some time. But if one were to travel to Paris, France today, one would notice just how far the church has fallen in France, as well as throughout most of Europe and even now throughout most of North America. The French revolutionaries may not have succeeded in this, but another revolution did make a fundamental change to how Sunday is observed, and that is the Industrial Revolution. We, of course, are all beneficiaries of the Industrial Revolution. Right now, I'm speaking to you at a time of the year in which the weather is completely inhospitable to our human life. And yet I do so with great comfort and ease, thanks to the marvels of our industrial age. But all of those marvels only come about because there's a relentless pursuit of work. We can't have all the marvels of our current age with a day of rest mixed into them. We instead have to constantly be working. A nuclear power plant can't just exactly have 24 hours off, and so therefore the need for work continues in order to create the societal structure that we have. And thus, Sunday has been fundamentally altered in our observance. Even the most religiously devout person who would say, I'll never make somebody else work on Sunday, and chooses not to go shopping, is of course still partaking in this whenever they turn on electricity in their home. Because of course that requires somebody somewhere to be working. Thus, the day of rest has been stripped away from our social fabric, and we now are living in an age where the Third Commandment is in true crisis. The horizons opened up by the Industrial Revolution simply cannot be overstated. It has forever changed our capacity not only to achieve things in this world, but also to experience the fruits of creation. One of my most treasured memories was being able to travel to the Holy Land, a feat that certainly would have looked different, if not been practically impossible, were it not for the wonders brought about through the Industrial Revolution. But that time in the Holy Land taught me just how important and how realizable it is for a civilization to hold to the seventh day, to keep the idea of the commandment that we all need a day of rest. When I was in the Holy Land, of course, there are three major religions that are there: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And all three religions have a holy day. For Muslims, it's on Friday. For Christians, Sunday. And for the Jewish people, it is on Saturday. And what I found as I walked about the city is that each of the different groups of people held very strictly to their day of rest. If you were to be going into the Muslim quarter of Jerusalem on a Friday, you'd find the shops closed. And if you went into the Christian quarter, you would find everything closed on a Sunday. And you would find that the Jewish establishments were all closed on a Saturday. Everybody recognized and understood the need for their day of rest. And yet there was never a situation where one could not get what he needed when we were traveling there in seminary. Whether it was on a Saturday, a Sunday, or a Friday, all of us were able to plan accordingly, and the Industrial Revolution's fruits were not in any way diminished. This is where it, of course, helps us to understand the need for a greater appreciation of the plurality of peoples. As Christians, we can certainly still hold to Sunday as a day of rest, and we can strive to help encourage other Christians to hold to it as a day of rest as well. But then we should understand that for a Jewish member of our community, that their day of rest is still on Saturday, and thus encourage and support them in having Saturday as a day of rest. And that we, by being open for business and more available for activity on a Saturday, can help provide for their need on their day of rest, just like somebody who isn't holding to the Christian faith can help provide for us in our needs on a Sunday. But this also means that we need to make sure we are not allowing Sunday to become just a day of entertainment. When we take the day of rest, we are striving to enter more deeply into the mystery of God. Yes, we may need to go out and get some emergency supplies on a Sunday, but we shouldn't be thinking of it as the day where we go to get a great deal. It shouldn't be the day where we prioritize our shopping. It shouldn't be the day where we think, well, let's just go ahead and have a family activity out and about. That might be an acceptable way for us to go about observing Sunday as the Lord's Day, but it could also become a distraction. A great measuring stick for us in this regard is, do we value the Sunday Mass more than the other activities we might plan on a Sunday? And are we helping to train the next generation to value the Sunday Mass more than those other activities? If we're speaking to our family about all the wonderful things we're going to do on a Sunday afternoon, and then we just talk about Mass as that thing we do in the morning, have we actually properly trained ourselves in today's day and age to be able to really embrace the Third Commandment and to know that it is a day of rest reserved for God? And what kind of activities can we prepare for ourselves in which really what we're focused on here isn't so much our own interests and hobbies, but rather an encounter with the living God? Sunday as a day of rest is more than just simply experiencing a break from our labors, but also appreciating the creative power of the Lord. As the Lord had created the world and now gives it to us for us to enjoy and experience in His goodness, so we should be looking for the Creator and not settling just for His creatures. Now, I'm not here to say that we need to walk back all the progress of the Industrial Revolution. Incredible progress has been made that has produced great flourishing for the human person. And without the Industrial Revolution, we would see the return of massive amounts of starvation, as well as an incredible shortening of our life expectancy. But we can use the Industrial Revolution more wisely. We can, instead of looking at it as an opportunity to increase our commercial activity and to look at how it is that we can enjoy our own idle pleasures, instead use it as a way in which we better serve God and others. Thanks to the Industrial Revolution, Sunday can actually be a day where we are even more effective in bringing the rest of the Lord into our community. While we think of rest on a Sunday as a time to retreat into our own home, it can actually become a time in which we go out and bring the fruit of our faith to others who are in need. Right now, as I speak to you in the midst of winter, we all know that in Minnesota, there are several people who go without food, without shelter during these cold months. But thanks to the Industrial Revolution, we can use a day of rest from our own labors to show works of charity and mercy to others who are in need. We have the capacity to be able to share the rest that we have earned on this day, to be with other people and help other people to know that God wants them to experience some share in the Lord's day. We have the opportunity for ever greater compassion on a Sunday now than we would have had just 100 years ago, let alone 500 years ago. Retrieving an understanding of Sunday as being about an encounter with God as a creator will go far in helping to retrieve the importance of attending Sunday Mass for all Catholics who no longer do so. The more and more we see Sunday as a day for ourselves and for our own interests, the less and less it becomes truly the Lord's day. But if it really is the Lord's day, and the greatest thing we can do for the Lord and with the Lord is come to the Holy Eucharist, then Sunday and the Sunday Mass become for us the cornerstone of all that we do. We are, I'm sure, all aware of the sad statistics of the number of Catholics who have ceased practicing the faith and particularly have ceased in any way taking part in the sacramental life of the Church. One of the most important things we can do in today's age is help people regain an importance of Sunday Mass, to retrieve that sense of obligation. Now, I often hear people say that we really don't want to think about Mass as an obligation, but it is an obligation, and we shouldn't be ashamed to think about that and explain why it is an obligation. We are obliged to attend Mass as a part of observing the Lord's Day. And the reason for this is because the Mass affords us an ability to experience God unlike anything else in the world. The reception of the Holy Eucharist, the proclamation of the Scriptures, the clear and demonstrable gathering of the faithful as the body of Christ are all something that help us to know who God is and to see Him at work in His world. We are obliged to follow God. We are obliged to know Him, and we are obliged to be in a relationship with Him. Instead of taking the fruits of the Industrial Revolution to mean that we should focus on ourselves, we can now use them to better serve the other people God has put in our own time and place. Whereas it would have been almost impossible just a century ago to make a trek of 20 miles on a given Sunday and return home safely, we now are able to do so with great ease, which means that the sphere of influence by which we can share our rest with another person has greatly increased. We can use, instead of all the time on Sunday to focus on NFL games or whatever other activity we prefer, to actually go out and help other people know the love of a Christian. Whether that's going to be spending time visiting someone in a nursing home, whether it's going to be going out to help people who are homeless and provide them some food, or whether it's going to be visiting a distant relative who just simply needs a friendly smile and a good conversation. Each Sunday now is an opportunity for us to be able to more perfectly follow God and to allow the rest that we receive on Sunday to become a communal event in which we draw closer to God together.